All right, as promised, Dan Gainor is joining us. And Dan, I just saw on the wire a few moments ago, and by the way, good afternoon to you, but the Mueller Report has been released. Are you excited?
Well, it's been dropped from Mueller to Barr, and all hell is breaking loose. So,
well, this is interesting.
I saw Kelly O'Donnell relay that there will be no more indictments, which, of course, upsetting institutional Washington in some ways. Stock market has gone kooky because everybody's freaking out because it's out.
It's interesting. I was chatting with one of our regular guests in the afternoon, Friday afternoon. You'll appreciate the name rightwinggranny.com. She's a blogger, and she made comment about this earlier this morning about the fact that when the news is not good, depending on your perspective, that is, government tends to dump everything on Friday. This is Dump Friday. Now, my question to you: have you got your very own copy yet?
No.
Oh, well, wait a second.
I think Barr is a litro bit ahead of me in the list.
No. Okay. As we go to the program here with Dan Gainor, I just want to say to you, on the contrary, Dan, Mary brought out the fact that if you go to Amazon, you can get.
Oh yes, it's been for sale for a long time.
I know. But what I liked about it is the. I've got to look for it here. The question. I think the introduction is being written by Alan Dershowitz. I like it. So if you want to get your copy of the Mueller Report with the introduction by Alan Dershowitz, it's $9.20 on Amazon, $7.99 on Kindle. And by the way, they're only selling it apparently in paperback. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, I mean this is one of the things that every journalist in Washington is cursing right now.
Really?
I think everyone needs to understand when something like this happens, everyone's life stops. People who had plans tonight, everybody, when it looked earlier today like it was not going to happen today, people make plans. People make dinner reservations,
really?
Scheduled dates. Every single journalist involved in politics is now working tonight.
But wait a second. What are they to do? When will they get their hands on the report?
Now they're just going to scurry around the report rumor this person heard this thing from this person who worked for Mueller, and they're all going to run around trying to get information, and they're all their lives, and everybody who covers the media and all that. There's a lot of bitter tonight in Washington. Mueller, especially with the lefty press, if Mueller's not going to indict anybody else, they're going to be doubly bitter. They're going to be mad at him for not going after Trump. If this turns out, and this is all speculation at this point. My theory is simple. If the report shows clear-cut collusion to work for a foreign power, even if it's the President of the United States, we would have known about it some time ago. The report would have been released to the FBI, the president would have been indicted and removed. There would have been a quick impeachment hearing, and he would have been replaced. He would have been forced to step down. They would have had. So I don't think they have any clear-cut proof of collusion. And because they don't have any clear-cut proof of collusion, people have been screaming collusion for 2.5 years now or something, are going to freak out, claim that Mueller is, somebody got to him and whatever.
Right.
But that there will be still nuggets that they'll find. Oh, see this horrendous thing that person did on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Oh my God, impeach him. And so everybody's going to be running around like chickens with their heads cut off and in a full-scale panic because everyone wants to leverage this. Republicans will say, assuming again there's no collusion, that this was a huge waste of time, as will all the other subsequent investigations that will be spun off based on this document. Democrats will say, see, on page 47 in paragraph 3, line 2, it says this. Oh, we got to have an investigation about that. And they will have hundreds and hundreds of people reading through this, looking for anything they can leverage into another investigation. So they'll go panic. And then the media will go to panic. I mean, this is like full employment for Washington.
All right. We're going to get back to this in just a moment with Dan Gainor of Newsbusters.org. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the phone lines are clear. 252 area code 247-7282, 247-7282. Are you excited about the release of this report? Want to know, will you read it? Honestly, will you read it? Do you care? We would like to know. Will you be watching the news this evening? Paying attention to the digital media? 252 area code 247-7282, 247-7282. Dan Gainor of Newsbusters.org with us this evening. As I was hanging up, I was just chatting briefly with our guest, Dan Gainor, here in just a moment. Dan Gainor of Newsbusters.org. I always say when I'm talking to him, I say, okay, hold on. Don't go anywhere. Where in the heck is he going to go? Okay, Taylor, thank you very much for that. All right, Dan Gainor of Newsbusters.org, continuing our conversation a few moments ago. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to opine on the Mueller Report, you're welcome to do so. Better yet, will you be buying it from Amazon or from the Washington Post? Those are two sources for the Mueller Report, yet to be, of course, released. Dan Gainor of Newsbusters.org in Washington, D.C., where he has just found out that basically even his evening has been interrupted on the speculation that you're going to get your hands on some information. Quick question for you, Dan. It was taken from Mueller's office to William Barr's office. Question number one, is there any possibility that the Attorney General has been receiving, advanced documents, advanced information on this? Number two, how was it delivered? Was it delivered literally in a van and they walked in and formally presented it to him? Those are the two questions for you.
Well, the first one, why we know he hasn't been getting documents? Because we haven't seen them.
Okay.
And,
all right.
And I mean, Washington leaks. Actually, I wouldn't say Washington leaks like a sieve. I would say a sieve leaks like Washington.
Okay, gotcha.
And so, I mean, especially in the anti-Trump era we're in, because there's so many institutional government people who so hate Republicans and so particularly hate Donald Trump. Because remember, the institutional Washington is made up of mostly Democrats and then some Republicans. Well, the Democrats guaranteed hate Trump, and then most of the Republicans hate Trump too.
Okay.
In Washington,
okay.
Not the rest of the country, but in Washington.
I got you. That
so
makes
so
good
the
point.
first one's easy. I have no idea. The second one, I imagine. Wow, this is Washington, but I imagine he received it in an electronic form, but maybe not. Because electronic form is quickly, easily shared, and maybe not, given the nature of things.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'd like to think government is sophisticated enough that they gave him a PDF at least, so he could print it out and see lots of people, look at it.
Right.
But I mean, for all I know, the way this has been handled, it could have been one copy sitting on his desk. He might have locked his door, put his chair under the doorknob, and kicked back to read it. I mean, there's a John le Carre aspect to all this, or who was the author who? Oh, I'm trying to think of who did all those Washington kind of thrillers. Not Ludlum. This is going to bother me because I used to like the author anyhow. But it's got that 60s, like, oh my gosh, what happens to our government now feel to it.
Right.
Because the odds are nothing. If you put money down 2 years ago on the Mueller investigation, said the Mueller investigation is going to lead to what about Donald Trump? Now, it might lead to the impeachment of Donald Trump because Democrats want to impeach Donald Trump if he chooses gone.
Right.
But will the Mueller investigation actually tangibly do anything? I think even Donald Trump thinks it won't. Donald Trump has said that he wants it to be public. Well, Donald Trump wouldn't want the document to be public unless Donald Trump didn't hold water to do anything to him.
The other aspect of this, and this goes to the role of the Attorney General in this. He's got to read this and then give a report What is his action to be done?
I'm not really sure. I don't know if he releases the whole thing then to the appropriate congressional committees, to everybody in Congress, to everybody in general. Maybe it depends on what's in it. I mean, although because I don't know if he's obligated to release it to the public. It could be, as far as I'm concerned, it could be days before we see it. I know Barr is another person sitting around in Washington going, "Phew, blankety, blankety, blank," but for giving this to me Friday at 5 p.m. The press has literally been following Mueller and Barr around and looking at their clothing choices to see if they could get a sense of when this is going to happen. I'm not kidding.
Okay, so in other words, if they were casually dressed, they knew they would be hunkering in and working in their office for long hours.
I'm not really sure what the rationale was. It was like a modern version of Kremlinology. I know there's a bunch of people who will get that reference here, but for people who don't remember Kremlinology, we knew so little what was going on in Russia back in the old days that we literally determined major geopolitical things based on micro information of, like, the Department of Transportation, the head of transportation for the Soviets walked to work today. That must mean that they're running low on gasoline.
Yeah, right.
Or maybe he gained 5 pounds and wanted to kind of walk it off.
Hey, good idea. All right, we've got a caller standing by. We'll see if Ernie from Emerald Isle is going to be buying a copy of the report. Ernie, good afternoon.
I'm not going to buy it.
Why not? Why not?
Well, here's the deal. Short of being proven to be a child rapist, Trump supporters from early on aren't going to give a darn what's in that report. And that's what people don't realize.
No, wait a second. That's a very interesting observation on your part. Dan, let's address this.
I think he's right. I think the Epstein report would have more danger for everybody in Washington than the Mueller report.
Really?
For people who don't realize, the Epstein report actually does involve child rape.
Yes, and it involves potentially previous presidents, I might add.
Yes, a report, at least one. Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah. And we'll leave it at that. But that's an interesting observation on that. So, Ernie, you're calling, rather than to brag, that you're not going to bother to waste $9 or $10. No, go ahead.
Not at all. Not at all. Whatever business transgressions he might have committed, and it's been proven, number one, it doesn't matter. You have to weigh that against the odds he's overcome to be the president and the accomplishments he's done, and for our country. It pales in comparison to any stupid stuff that this Mueller report can possibly reveal.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, to go to Ernie's point, which I think is 100% right. I think Ernie is really spot on here. I think if the report includes ticky-tack things about, he gave money to Stormy Daniels, literally no one cares. I mean, that's not an endorsement of immorality and of having sex with porn stars. It's not. It's just an acceptance that Washington tends to be sleazy, and, someone who's done sleazy things in their past, you can't swing a dead cat in Washington and not hit somebody like that.
Right.
So I think everybody who supported Trump all along the way would say, yeah, he comes from New York finance, he comes from Hollywood, he comes from media, and he's now in Washington. I mean, none of that should surprise anyone. So unless there's something substantive, by the way, he killed this person or whatever, and I think he'd be indicted for that. All along they've tried to claim that he worked for a foreign government, which
right.
Not just collusion but treason. And that's a thing that certainly would distance him from the conservative movement.
Yeah, and
no one ever believed it. And here we are. I can't believe there's collusion in that document, because it's a document and not something has not already happened.
We haven't had basically an indictment or any kind of documents passed to the federal government in some fashion, or the attorney general to pursue this. All right, Ernie, before I wrap it up with you, go ahead.
One final comment. I don't really care if Trump's had an occasional girlfriend. Bill Clinton was idolized, and he had many girlfriends.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hypocrisy at its best, or worst.
Well, I think Ernie also taps into one of the things that the left does is because it holds no one to moral standards. Right. Then what it does is says, well, you guys believe in moral standards, so we're going to hold you to the moral standards we don't hold our own people to, and the press embraces the liberal position on that. So if you're a Christian person and you sin ever, then they say, oh, see, you're a hypocrite. No, you're a human, and you make mistakes. We all make mistakes. For the press to lionize Bill Clinton, and here's a guy who is notorious for having slept around, not just with Monica Lewinsky. I mean, there's allegations not just of sexual impropriety, but of assault, of allegations of rape. I mean, all throughout his career, and the media didn't care. In fact, you remember the comment, the one liberal who came out and said she would have performed certain acts on Bill Clinton,
right.
just to have him stay in the White House. I mean, it's this is where the left falls on this. So yeah, I think this has the great potential to not be what the left has been calling for, and so they're going to respond instead of the rational response. Say, well, okay, well, let's move on. No, what they're going to do is look at this. It could be 200 pages. It could be 200,000 pages. I have no idea. Document. Look at this big document, and you go through it with a fine-tooth, microscopic comb, and look for every little word, phrase, or thing that they can use to try to blast Trump, try to blast Trump's allies, try to spin off other investigations, and to keep this going not just through 2020 and the election, but to keep it going on forever, as long as Donald Trump is alive. Remember, we are now 45 years after Watergate.
Right.
And they use it all the time.
Good point.
They still talk about it. Because it was the halcyon days of yore for journalists.
Right.
And so they are going to keep this going, keep this investigation going, keep conspiracies going, keep theories going, keep.
But after a while,
But after a while, they're going to go after Barron Trump. I mean, I think Barron Trump will be 89, and they'll still be digging this stuff up.
But Dan, it will, to Ernie's comment, it will get very old to the extent that no one will even hear it. Ernie, I appreciate the call.
One final thing, please.
Real quickly.
I knew going in, we weren't electing Dr. Billy Graham to be the president.
Right. No.
we were electing a flawed human being who I thought, many people thought he could get the job done, wasn't being done, and he's proving to be doing that. So,
all right.
What else could you ask for?
All right. Thank you very much, Ernie. As a matter of fact, talking about flawed human beings, that raises a topic that came up last evening, Dan Gainor of Newsbusters.org with us. And that is Beto O'Rourke. One of the millennials said, well, his past may come back to haunt him. And I argued, why? It hasn't haunted other previous candidates. Stay with us for more. We'll find out Dan's response to that, as well as the good, the bad, and the ugly for the past week here on Viewpoints with Dan Gainor of Newsbusters.org. Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240. We've got Dan Gainor with us this afternoon. Of course, of newsbusters.org, and I'm going to be interested in talking to Dan here in a few moments. The topic of electing, flawed human beings, and that topic came up last evening, Dan, but we'll get to that in a moment. I'm looking forward to hearing the good, the bad, and the ugly for the week in light of the fact that, gosh, it sounds to me like either the bad or the ugly is the fact that the Mueller Report was released today, Friday of all days of the week. Absolutely. With that, well, it's just giving William Barr the opportunity over the weekend to, peacefully read through that. I'm wondering if he's peacefully reading through it. Dan, good afternoon to you. Let's go to the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's hope there's a good this week.
Well, there's kind of an interesting good. Congressman Devin Nunes has filed suit against Twitter and a couple Twitter accounts as well. And even though, I'll be honest, I think various ways the law is written, the Communications Decency Act, and then also libel, I think both of them will prevent him from getting very far. I think he did it with the express intent of trying to call attention to the problems of social media companies, that you can't really sue them, that they can say anything and do anything to members of Congress and get away with it. So I think he did it more as a attention-getting exercise, and I commend him for that because it's a big problem, and I deal with it all the time now, and it's scary. And I know there's a lot of people in traditional media don't believe it, but that doesn't make it not true. They also don't believe they're biased.
Well, it does, and I'm glad that you brought that up as the good, because that leads to another conversation as well. All right, that's the good. Now for the bad.
Well, the bad, I'm going to have two bads. Because so then we'll go to ugly. The first bad is the media coverage of Beto O'Rourke. How quickly, where it was adoration at first, how quickly that narrative changed. How quickly it was determined that Beto O'Rourke is a white guy,
right,
and he's not sufficiently liberal. And so then watching Beto O'Rourke desperately chase the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow by heading left.
Right.
And so it's been this, the media pushing one more candidate far to the left, to the point where National Review has been talking about how the Democrats are under threat of the Twitter primary. And the Twitter primary, the result of it is basically the most radical people are on Twitter, right and left. And if Democrats pick their candidate via Twitter, they're going to find that the rest of the country doesn't want them.
All right.
So there's that. And so then the other bad, as much as Beto's been bad, the fallout from New Zealand has been awful. What happened in New Zealand is absolutely horrendous. It's not just a tragedy. I mean, it was a terrorist attack. I can call out Muslim terror attacks. I can call out white supremacist terror attacks. I can call out terror attacks by Martians and using ray guns. I don't care. I think if your goal is to kill innocent people, then there is something wrong with you. And you are, it's an organized society should organize against you. But here's the interesting thing. One, the media tends to focus only on the terror attacks they care about. They only care about terror attacks that fit the narrative. So when a Muslim guy from Turkey killed people in the Netherlands, that story was here and gone almost instantly. When Palestinian Muslims fire rockets into Israel, or whether they knife a soldier, steal a gun, and shoot citizens and kill two people, those stories make no news or go away almost immediately. Now, I know there's not as many victims, but the number of Palestinian terror attacks is massive. The number of Muslim terror attacks is massive, and the media want to suppress it and say the words I just uttered are in fact Islamophobia as opposed to facts. So there's that problem. And the other end of the spectrum is, yes, New Zealand went ahead and is now planning on taking guns from all of its citizens.
Right.
They want to take semi-automatics, which includes basically anything where you can drop a magazine out of a gun, more than 5 shot, I think it is. So that's pretty much. I don't know if it's just handguns. I believe it is, but I'm not 100% certain. But still, in the U.S., the AR-15 or other semi-automatic rifles are far and away the most popular rifles. So there are 250,000 gun owners in New Zealand, or semi-automatic gun owners. I'm not clear, but a lot of people own the darn gun. And they have now said that if you don't turn in your guns, then you will be prosecuted.
Right.
Rather than the media looking at this and saying, boy, this seems extreme, and they're going to take a lot of law-abiding citizens and turn them into criminals, the media have celebrated it and said, gosh, why can't we do that here?
That is that is the bad, and I think the last bad is the worst bad of the bads. Baddest. Okay, let's go.
Now we move to the ugly.
The ugly.
See, we're much more in sync now. He's been doing this a little while.
I know.
You did that. That was great. And so, yes, the ugly, you actually are right. The ugly is the Mueller Report.
Really?
The media have been telling us for a couple years that there's collusion. Oh, my God, the end of the world is coming. Trump is the end of the Trump administration. They've been telling us.
It's not happening. I think we just okay. We're gonna get him back. Taylor's gonna try to reach back to him. He was on his cell phone. That was Dan Gainor of Newsbusters.org. I'll tell you what. While we're doing that, we're gonna go ahead and take a break so that we can get this on about the ugly part and the Mueller Report, of course, which we were just talking about a moment ago. Dan Gainor of Newsbusters.org. When we get back, I also want to talk to him about the embarrassing situation for Facebook. The fact that they, I wouldn't say throttled, they stopped the president's digital guru. I'm curious what impact this is going to have on the digital media. We've challenged the digital industry for, trying to control the media, and now we've found it out exactly how they do it. Stay with us here on Viewpoints with Dan Gainor. Viewpoints on the talk station FM 107 AM 1240. We're going to wrap up the ugly here in a moment and then get on a few other items. Dan Gainor of Newsbusters.org with us this evening. And just
before I was so rudely interrupted by Textale.
That's exactly right.
Well, basically, I was trying to say the media have been telling us this was the apocalypse for a couple of years. And so unless the result of this is the indictment of the president, not the impeachment, because remember, you can impeach the president for walking and chewing gum. The concept of high crimes and misdemeanors has long been acknowledged. It's whatever Congress thinks it is.
Right.
So if they want to get him, they can. So now the question is, what will the report say? But unless the report is almost apocalyptic for the Trump presidency, then it's been oversold. And, the reason why there's been so much other stuff this week, including, once more, discussion of the 25th Amendment solution, because if they can't get Trump with the collusion effort, they have to push Trump out some other way. And the press is out for Trump's blood. They want to destroy the man. So if they succeed, that's one thing. If they don't succeed, bear in mind they're going to do to Trump what they've done to every other president that they've wanted to get years later. They're going to be going after him decades from now. I didn't mean to joke. I wasn't joking when I said that they're going to be going after Barron Trump when he's in his 80s. They are. That they are the ones who control the narrative of history, and they are going to determine that anyone connected to this administration, anyone connected to this president, anyone descended from this president must be destroyed. And they're going to find out something really awful, because I think Donald Trump Jr. is going to go into politics, and they are not going to like that.
Okay, Dan Gainor with Newsbusters.org. Dan, I want to talk about something that we've chatted about in the past, and we're going to get into the issue of the flawed. Well, let's talk about the flawed candidates first. Then I want to get to the Facebook issue and the fact that they blocked President Trump's chief social media director. But let's talk about the issue of the flawed characters. And you mentioned this a few moments ago with Beto O'Rourke and the fact that all of a sudden it was discovered that he was just a white male. That was a shocking discovery on the part of the media. They had been, of course, touting him as the next, practically as the next Robert or John Kennedy. I'm not sure which.
Or Redford, at least.
Okay, but they did not, you're right. They did not bring up Ted Kennedy, which I find that interesting as well. Maybe he is damaged goods after all. But
ironically, they didn't bring up Ted Kennedy, even though he's the most obvious comparison, given his drunken driving, history.
Yeah.
And now you can tell they're out to get Beto because, one, he brought in a lot of money that they weren't sure he would, and that worries them. But also, they literally reported on the man getting a parking ticket this week.
Oh, really? I missed that.
Because he was driving his own little van. He got a $50 parking ticket. In fact, they know he got the ticket. I know how much it was. It's a hint. That they are now microanalyzing everything he does because he's not liberal enough. And so you're going back through his history. Oh my gosh, he did this, he did this, he did this. Yes, The press is trying to drive the entire campaign to the left, which is what they always do, which is why they're also trying to push William Weld, John Kasich, and others into the GOP primary because they want to damage Trump and also throw in people who are from the left.
Well, it strikes me that that's not going to go anywhere no matter what, as we heard from Ernie and others we've talked to in the past about their support for President Trump. But here's the issue with Beto O'Rourke. The fact that he has been, if you will, leveraging his flawed lifestyle, heavy drinking, avoiding arrest, running away from, as a matter of fact, escaping from an arrest, and then the rather crude and remarks he's made about others and the use of a variety of four-letter words. And I was asking the millennials about that last evening, and they're not a big fan of Beto in spite of that. And I'm kind of surprised by that.
Well, I think I'm going to say this. I think they've been raised as even the conservative ones have been raised in a woke era. And the idea of voting for a young white guy when there are young people of color, and particularly young women who they can vote for, I think doesn't appeal to them.
Wow.
So there's a lane for Joe Biden. Joe Biden's an old, established politician. Some people like him because he's been around for a long time. He gets a certain amount of stability in the job. He's not a flash in the pan. So there's some people who support that. But the very people who support that, I think a lot of them are also the people who might have supported Beto otherwise. Then there's the radical element, which is pretty much the rest of the Democratic Party, who want to see, Cory Booker or Kamala Harris or,
right.
God help them, Elizabeth Warren or whoever, and they're all battling for that butt edge. That guy, the mayor.
Right.
They want him. They want somebody, and it's a quest for it's like, we must find a savior to lead us out of the wilderness, and because we have to stop Trump, and then there's Bernie Sanders, who's got his core support, which doesn't seem as strong as it was because he's been outlived. He's been out socialist. Right.
There
are people to the left. Bernie Sanders is an open socialist, and there are people running who are to the left of him.
I know. It's all right. Let's move to the issue very quickly on the Facebook story. And of course, this also, I think, segues nicely into the experience in the European Union. This year, the second year, practically, I think it's second year in a row, Google finds itself being fined $1.8, I think the number is $1 billion this year by the European Union for monopolistic reasons. Now, the topic then goes to Facebook. And speaking of monopolies, this is a real conundrum for us. Obviously, we appreciate the availability of communications through the internet, and frankly, the Facebooks, the Googles, the Amazons, the AT&Ts, they've all made it possible. But now, of course, they've also proven they have control of the environment. And a particular case, of course, goes to the president's digital director, social media director, and he got blocked simply for asking a question. My question to you, Dan, is there a possibility that we will see some legal action in Washington, D.C. to either break up or in some fashion eliminate some of the controls that the digital behemoths have?
Well, both sides are now starting to find themselves supportive of regulation, and that is a scary place.
Isn't that interesting?
And because basically, I think, the Democrats want regulation because they want to regulate everything. They want to regulate how often you go to the bathroom.
Right.
That's just the way they are. That's the nature of the beast. But Republicans are shifting that way because they feel like they can't get a fair hearing with the social media companies. Even though they bring up the problems persist. The social media companies are reactive to every liberal push, including we saw with New Zealand. You must take down these videos.
Right.
You must take down this manifesto. You must do it globally. Do it now. Do it faster than you ever thought you would do it. And you must spend more money doing this kind of stuff, or we will regulate you. Well, if your response is always to bow to left-wing critics, the GOP is not going to see a lot of room to negotiate. And so, yes, they're being pushed that way. But here's the problem. Regulation. How often do regulations solve things that never help the right?
Exactly.
I mean, you're going to get something. You're going to get a regulation form that might even initially address a couple concerns of the right, but it will be the people running that organization will almost all be liberal, and then over time almost immediately they will create a global hate speech set of rules.
Exactly.
Facebook's set of hate speech rules, by the way, are atrocious.
And we've already seen
Twitter and everybody's.
Right.
But if you get them together, they're going to be worse.
And we've already seen this, and we're wrapping up. We've seen this in the United Kingdom, where a mother failed to respond to someone by their chosen pronoun, gender confusing pronoun, and she is being charged with, of all things, hate speech. To your point, Dan, we're already seeing it. Dan Gainor of Newsbusters.org with us this afternoon. Dan, I'll stand by. I want to chat with you and find out where you're going to be reading the Mueller Report this evening. Or, in fact, do you get it? Dan Gainor, as always. Dan, thanks for being with us.